Ora, talofa hai, and welcome to the next episode of Tanurumanga's Team Talk, proudly sponsored by Victual, New Zealand's first health and wellbeing supplement that combines ancient Māori and Pacifica wisdom and ingredients. And this week, as my guest, is Melodie Robinson, a tenacious and competitive loose forward who always was around, or around the play as good loose forwards should be. She is a two-time World Cup winner while representing the Black Ferns from 1996 to 2002. She also represented the Black Ferns Sevens at tournaments in Hong Kong and Japan. And I think this is the amazing bit, Mel. While you were playing, you finished her physical education degree from Otago Uni and a journalism certificate from Wellington Polytech. Then later went on to finish a postgrad diploma to complement her physical education degree while working full-time with Sky Sports, and then later finished an MBA from the University of Auckland. Mel followed the journalism path and had many roles in the media industry before she became the first woman rugby commentator and host on Sky TV, paving the way for others that we see today. And she is now TVNZ's General Manager for Sport and Events. She also was awarded the New Zealand Rugby Players Association Kirk Award in recognition of her outstanding contribution and service to the game and her fellow players. The contribution to rugby is not just as a player. It includes coaching her son's team, sitting on boards of her club, College Rifles, and the Rugby Foundation, as well as being appointed to sit on the board of Rugby World Cup Limited as an international rugby players representative. Geez, Mel, I don't know if we've got time for anything else after that, but that's awesome. I'm humbled to be in your presence.
Well, thank you. And look at you. You should be on telly. That's awesome. No, I don't have any spare time. You're right. The husband's getting neglected big time.
Oh, hey, look, I can understand that. And I just, sorry if I've embarrassed you, but I think that's something that, we understand, we see your face on TV as you do, you see, but all the work that gets you there, that's what people don't see, it's that typical iceberg analogy, all they see is, your pretty face on TV. Well, we don't anymore as much, because you're behind the scenes. Yet how you got there, I think, is a great story and how hard you worked. But one question I do have, I've talked about, you had went to Otago Uni, Wellington Polytech, Auckland Uni, but you played for Canterbury. How'd that work?
No, I didn't play for Canterbury.
Didn't you?
I've played for Otago when I was at Otago Uni. I played for Wellington when I was at Wellington studying and working, and then I played for Auckland. But
jeez. But you're so that's yes. That's where it came from. I was wondering, all this talk of, she's played for Canterbury or she's from Canterbury, but
I have two eyes. No, I haven't. So no, I had to fit my playing around my education, obviously, because I grew up in Christchurch, and then I knew I wanted to do a PE degree. So actually going to Otago introduced me to rugby, which was awesome because it wasn't cool for girls back then. And actually, while I was at uni studying and playing rugby, I did a sociology of sport paper, which was my favourite paper, and realised that actually talking about sports and studying and getting really deep into the social aspects behind it was what I loved, and that's why I wanted to be a journalist. Plus, I did a piece of research on women's coverage, and only 7% of the coverage that I looked at was on women's sport. So I was like, stuff this. I want to be a journalist so that I can put more women's sport in the newspapers or on the radio or on TV. So that was my dream, which kicked it all off, all in Otago, as I was wearing very big misshapen rugby jerseys and paying for my own strapping and convincing my mum it was a good idea to play rugby.
I can imagine that discussion didn't go down too well when you're talking to mum. And so you had no rugby when you were in Christchurch?
Yeah, no, because the girls are so lucky now they can actually play it, from junior, like right from when age 4. So we didn't have that at all. It was only club rugby and no schoolgirls rugby. So I had to wait till I was at university to get my shot. Yeah.
I find that amazing, only because such on the field, you're, rip shit and bust, and you'd think that someone that's played the game for, would have to have played the game for a long time to have that much aggression, or was it just that was just who you were?
Oh yeah, no, definitely the aggression is definitely me. I've witnessed many young men running away from me in the pub late at night, Tana. So no, but you know what? Everybody grows up in New Zealand watching rugby, and you pick it up through osmosis. So that was definitely me. My dad and I had a great relationship watching rugby together. And actually my great-great-grandfather, Tom Robinson, was a Māori All Black, and his brother, Toby, was an All Black. So we have very strong whānau links to playing rugby. And then I found out Tom was actually a rugby administrator like me. He did a lot of voluntary work on rugby boards for Banks Peninsula as well. So I've actually followed in his footsteps, except for he had 16 children and I've only had 2. Yeah.
Or some might say he had the easy job.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's the missus that was probably having the hard job, to be honest.
Yeah, exactly. So, so you got down to Otago, and I've had, one of your teammates, Dr. Farah Palmer, on the podcast, and she talked around, the times in Otago, and, being pioneers in terms of women's rugby at that stage, how, what you have to do to obviously play, but, you get on in life as well, and you've got everything running alongside. So, how did you find it going from Otago to the Black Ferns, winning World Cups? You it must have been a very quick progression to that stage.
It was, but it wasn't without its challenges. So I think the first thing was that in Otago, when a girl got the opportunity to play rugby, there was a huge amount of empowerment that came with that, of physically testing your body against somebody and being allowed to do that. And so that really made us girls playing that sport super confident, and we had such healthy self-esteem, which was really unusual for young women. So, it's one of those wonderful things that rugby brings you. And then we had a coach, Sue Garden Bishop, who she was married to Stephen Bishop, but I say she was 10 times better than him because she played professional basketball in the UK. She played for the Black Ferns. She was a New Zealand touch player. She was a sprinter. She was unbelievable. And what she did was she actually looked at the athletes on the field and changed a lot of our positions. She didn't want unfit, bigger forwards. She wanted really mobile forwards. So she saw me punching someone on the rugby field and decided I was going to be a number 7, which was great because I could never catch a high ball anyway because I was a fullback. She found my position for me, and then she fought the Otago Rugby Board and really won them over and influenced them, and they actually paid for us for our first ever North Island tour. She was pregnant with Jackson at the time in her belly, and we went up there, and that's when a lot of us first got noticed by the Black Ferns coach, Daryl Suasua. So I really put it down to Sue Garden Bishop's innovation and commitment for a lot of us actually getting in the team. And then the other challenge for me is that I am a bit of a rat bag, and I do have a very vivacious personality, and sometimes, like every flanker, I do like breaking rules. So you can imagine I was a bit of a handful back in my 20s, and Daryl Suasua was constantly, trying to tell me, you're not allowed to do this, you can't do that. So it was sometimes I had to actually play better than other people to get in the team because I was such a rat bag, and he knew he'd have to manage me a lot. But again, those lessons and that time and energy that Daryl put into me, it helped me understand self-awareness, purpose, living by values, and working with a team. And those are attributes which to this day really contribute positively in all of my business dealings and my career that I have chosen to take. So, those two people, Sue and Daryl, really, really appreciate the time and effort that they put into me, which helped me with my job and stuff.
Oh, you mentioned Sue Garden Bishop. Sue's from my hometown. She's from Wainuiomata, and she was actually my sister's best friend. They went to school together. Yeah, my sister Janice. So I knew Sue well. I get my sister used to try and leave. There's a big age gap between my sister and I. So, she tried to leave the house without me, and I was only probably 5 or 6 at that stage. And then I used to love going with my sister, but, as teenagers, they don't want to hang out with their 5-year-old son or brother hanging around. So I used to cry to my mum that I wanted to go with my sister Jay. And so she had to take me. My mum forced her to take, I think my sister was 16, 17 at the stage, and driving. So, I'd get into the car, and it didn't matter. I was in the car, so, I'd get a hiding. I knew I was going to get a hiding as soon as I got in the car, but I'd achieved what I'd wanted, I got to go to the car, and then Sue was always nice to me, not like my sister.
Sue was great. And her son, Jackson, who's obviously a professional rugby player now, he had to be the representative for Sue at our first ever Black Ferns capping. That was 2 years ago now. They hadn't capped any of us. And it was a room full of Black Ferns who hadn't seen each other for years and years. Such a wonderful experience. And he was there to hear some of the wonderful things being said about Sue. And the best thing for Jackson was pretty much he was the only young, good-looking guy there. So he had a lot of the current Black Ferns eyeing him up and flirting with him, so he loved every minute of it. And he actually told me that it was Sue, not Stephen, who taught him how to pass. So very, very cool.
Yeah. Oh, and I think she was a pioneer in her time too. She was one of the first women coaches of a men's team in Otago, and when she came up to Wellington with Norths as well. Yeah, and she's a sad loss, when she passed away. So, I know Sue well, and like you say, I remember her. So I kept telling my sister, says, "Well, you'd be like Sue, be fit, man,
And she's got great legs.
Yeah. So your rugby journey with you went and played sevens. Now we get into being the pioneer of, I love pioneers. I've been supported by strong women all my life. My mother, my 3 sisters, my wife, and now I've got 3 daughters. So it just seems to be the way that I'm just surrounded by and always told what to do by women. So, what did it mean to you to be the first woman presenter and commentator, host on Sky TV? Because it's, like you say, you're a trailblazer there.
Gosh, it was a very unusual time, to be honest. It was so early, 2003 for Sky to select a woman on rugby, and Super Rugby is what they threw me into, is outrageous, really, because there was a lot of opposition. The South Africans didn't want me on their broadcasts, and certainly Australia didn't. And I knew that I'd heard that some of the bigwigs at New Zealand Rugby had said, "Oh no, why her?" So I was battling against some real opposition, including, the commentary teams all work together. They've got chemistry, and to have a young girl they knew nothing about being thrust on them was not ideal for them either. But what I would say is I did plan meticulously and really put a huge amount of work in to make sure that I was as ready as I could be when I hit Sky TV. It was always my dream. That's why I did the post-graduate in journalism in Wellington. I moved up there, didn't know anybody, just went for it because I knew I had to get a journalism background to get my foot in the door. And then I ended up, working for Radio New Zealand. I worked for Mana News. I worked for Dominion. I worked for just about every publication you'd write about in this country, to get journalism schools and writing, and had voice lessons as well, so I could read. So that finally, when I started to think I was going to end rugby, I was ready to go to Rick Solizzo, and he introduced me to Brendan Butt, and I said to them, I want to be a commentator. And because of my actual journalism qualification more than anything, that was one of the reasons they recommended me to the head of sport, Kevin Kenrick. Now, Kevin had my CV, and he took it in to John Follett, the CEO at the time, and he said, "This is the girl we're going to try." And it had like this beauty queen photo on the front. I was looking really hot, if I do say so. And John goes, "No, I don't want some good-looking bimbo like this, and you know, I can't believe I'm saying this because I don't look very good today, but okay. He goes, I don't want a good-looking bimbo, get me someone who actually understands rugby. And Murray Deaker had actually given me a shot on radio, and I was filling in for him on one of his late talkbacks, and someone rang up and said, oh, all you women's rugby players are lesbians. And so I gave him an answer and then went into depth around something around the Blues. And by chance, John Follett was driving home, and he heard me doing this massive breakdown of rugby, and he rang Kevin the next day and said, who was that girl on radio last night? She's the one I want. He goes, oh, it's the same one. He goes, I will get her. That's how I got the job. But yeah, no, it was a lot of hard work, and then the work wasn't finished because you continue learning. You should continue learning everywhere you go and be open-minded. And I had to learn a hell of a lot when I got there. I made a mistake in a couple of, law interpretations. I got slagged. I had to be very resilient because of the resistance from some people of having their beer. And so I would work harder than anybody else and do more research and just make sure that, I would have longevity in the career. So I write all my stuff. I've always written all my stuff. I co-produced a hell of a lot at Sky TV as well. And yeah, in the end, I think I built up some really good capability there. So it was a great experience with some bloody good people at Sky. A lot of time on the road though, and at the end of the day, I think for me, there was, a certain time period I could do that for, and then I had to think about what was next. So it was a great period of my life.
I think that must be tough too. Like, I think you said it earlier that was a definite goal of yours to be, commentating and be on Sky, and then you achieve it, and then all of a sudden, actually, yeah, like you say, this period's nearly done. What's next?
Yeah.
But also listening to you, the biases that you had to go, to overcome, as you said, for a lot of people, it can wear you down, your resilience to work through it. So how did you keep doing that? I know, you have to keep reproving yourself. I probably have an understanding of it a little bit, probably not to the extent of yourself, but, you're always playing with a chip on your shoulder, it's something that I know I was able to do. The people that, said you wouldn't be able to amount to much, you live here, you're not going to do anything, and, things like that. Mm. And then, your whole attitude towards proving people wrong. Some people can do it, and sometimes it gets really hard, because then you start to actually believe what people are saying about you. How were you able to overcome that?
It was really hard, and I think I've only just started to get on top of that. I think one of the things that really got me was a senior commentator had said to me, you're a party animal, you don't behave like you should, no one will respect you, you'll never have the credibility that you want. And so that's why I worked extra hard on the facts and the prep and the writing, and added all those other skills because I was going to prove him wrong. And I had people that backed me, and so I really listened and learned from people who treated me with respect and were there to help me and guide me, not cut me down. And I think you can really make the judgment. Some people are just horrible people, and you'll never ever win them over. So you just have to cut them loose and just not worry about it. And some of the comments, I got an email sent to me one time, who is this gormless woman on TV? What the hell does she know about rugby? And why is she dressed like a 60-year-old? She is not attractive. Well, I read it and thought, oh, well, too bad. He doesn't like my look. All good. Just didn't worry about that stuff. But water off a duck's back. But, it's only today, probably in 2022, that I could say to you that feedback that I got about my behaviour, I have worked really hard on my self-awareness and making the right judgments about when I'm allowed to be, a little bit rambunctious and tell outrageous jokes, or when I've got to pull back some of that, and I've got to read the room. That self-awareness work, far out. You've got to do it every day. It's really, really hard because you've got to be empathetic to, your impact on other people. And I reckon I'm only starting to get that right. And then the other thing I would say to that person who said that to me, guess what? I'm actually not a carbon cutout of all the other journalists that you've had come through broadcast school in Christchurch. I'm actually a tomboy Māori girl who has a whole lot of colour. And yes, I do have a big personality. And if people, want to judge me and don't think I'm credible just because of that, then, that's their problem. So now that I'm 48, I finally can say that.
Yeah, exactly. Especially as you said, sometimes it's relentless, and the energy that you need to expend to, like you say, to put up, this is who I am, this is how I have, like they want you to put you in these, that cookie cutter, this is how I see you, this is how you should be, instead of you just respecting yourself as yourself. And you're in a male dominated vocation, and it's even harder. It was back then, I'm sure, but you've made it less of that now, as people have learned to understand that, hey, we're all different and we need to respect everyone's differences. Big
time. And you know what, this is my theory on that. If you have everybody behaving the same and being well mannered and everybody is like everybody else, then you're going to have one hell of a boring All Black team or Black Ferns team, because it's your people like your Temi Putters or you or your Ma'anonus or me who actually bring that spice and creativity onto a sports field. That's where the flair comes from and the creativity. It's actually from the innate personality of that person. So we've got to make sure that people can be themselves in teams.
Exactly, and then you get the best out of them, isn't it? Instead of, oh yeah, I want you to play like this, do this like that guy does as well. Why don't you just pick that guy then? Why'd you be to be something I'm not? And I know as a coach, that was probably something that you had to really bring out in a lot of players. And look, you've got here because of what you've done. Don't clam up now and try and be something that you've seen. Otherwise, we've picked the wrong guy. I just think in terms of, so now, we've talked about your working life there, and I'm sure we'll talk a bit more about it. What are your thoughts now? Geez, you're involved in nearly every level of rugby. That's why I wanted to talk about it. You're involved in every level of rugby. So now with women's rugby, where it is at, what are your thoughts around, we've just seen Super Rugby, Aopiki's about to start, women's players becoming professional in sevens, and now, in the last this week, I think it's just been announced that, women are fully professional in the 15s games. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, firstly, it's a huge positive step forward to have professional women's rugby players, because now they're able to prepare in a way which means we're going to have, more of a consistent product. We know that Black Fern product is already unbelievable, and the Sevens girls have been full-time for quite some time now, and look at what they did at the Olympics. That's the brand of Black Ferns Rugby. And so now that we've got these 15s girls all contracted, we'll hopefully see more of the same. They need competition though. For 14 months, no test match, even though the All Blacks and even the Māori All Blacks got test rugby, and nothing for the Black Ferns. And we're surprised when they lose so badly to two very professional teams at the end of last year. So I think that there needs to be serious investment into competitions. World Rugby is actually launching a new global competition for women, and the New Zealand team will be in Pack 4. Sorry, that's my dog, the stick on him. He's barking at the possum next door. Baz, come here. Get out.
Baz, come here.
If I turn the light on as well so you can see me.
See, that's why the beauty of, it's not live, as you'd know, we can edit. I'm getting very good at editing, so.
Right. So let me start again. So World Rugby has just is launching a new global sports competition for women, and they're geographical competitions. And in New Zealand, it's called Pac-4. So it's Black Ferns versus United States, Canada, and Australia. So that's one hell of a fantastic competition for World Rugby to have set up. But don't forget, this is World Rugby doing this. This is not New Zealand Rugby. New Zealand Rugby still have to set up some competition, legitimate competition for their Black Ferns team as well. So, yep, great. They sent them off at the end of last year. Now we've got a World Cup in October, November. I saw in the calendar they might be hosting a team here for 2 test matches as well as Pac-4, but, you know, it's not a lot of comp, so they need a big rocket up their ass about that, definitely. Yeah.
So with the Pac-4, will that be held in New Zealand, did you say? Sorry. Yes,
I believe so. So World Rugby are just organising that now. It is in the calendar for the to time in with the quarterfinal, the semi-final and the final of Super Rugby.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's pretty fantastic. Nobody has the broadcast rights yet. So I'm just waiting to see what happens with that. But, you know, I have a bit of a theory about women's rugby that right now, with the numbers increasing for the last few years, with the interest improving, the coverage of media on the rise as well, it's right now is the time to really shake the market around this team to be able to commercialise them. And one way to do that is for traditional rivals and the business world to actually link together to do it together. So, you know, TVNZ's had partnerships with Sky, or TVNZ's had partnerships with Spark. I think, you know, doing it together would actually make Black Ferns rugby grow bigger than we'd ever believe. And then New Zealand Rugby Union has the numbers and the data to show potential sponsors to increase the revenue coming in. So I think it's a really exciting time.
Oh, it is. And yeah, that is the key, isn't it? To make sure it's sustainable. And, you know, as you said, we've talked about, you talked about, you know, it wasn't such a great end to the year, but we know, geez, if you haven't got games and you're not practicing, you know, what you're, putting in place what you're practicing on a regular basis, then it's a you know, you're literally just going in blind, aren't you? So, you know, big year this year with the World Cup coming up, and as many games as they can get, I'm sure, you know, that's what they need. So it's looking forward to it.
Oh, I'm still confident. I wasn't meant to tell anybody, but I do know that Graham Henry was given the SOS call, and he has actually analysed all of the Black Ferns matches for Glenmore. And so imagine that, getting Graham Henry to do that for you. He's going to break down, you know, what they're doing wrong and help them fix it up. And then hopefully the Black Ferns will get access to a few of those special resource coaches, particularly, you know, around the lineouts and stuff. So I still think they'll do great.
Yeah, and we have to chuck everything at it, don't we, in terms of, you know, a New Zealand rugby, you know, community, because, you know, it's on our back doorstep. Support it, resource it, and I'm sure Ted's doing nothing anyway. He's just either fishing or, you know, sitting back and drinking wine with Raywin, I think.
He's definitely drinking wine. That's for sure.
So with you know, with Aupiki starting, and what do you think of the lessons that need to be learned? Obviously, this is initially starting the first Super Rugby tournament of for women. What can they learn from the men? Because when we started, as I reflect, we didn't probably do it as well as we could have. And I think also around professionalism for young people, you know, all of a sudden you're making minimum wage, you're laboring, and then we're getting all this money. And, you know, this is what I like to talk around, you know, with, unlike yourself, who had you know, that you had to do the hard yards and you put yourself through your education, you know, and we've seen the fruits of that, you know, now with the positions you hold. Yet, you know, there's some schoolgirls involved with Super Rugby. We know that the Players Association does a great job, and, you know, they're more involved than they were back in our day. Yet, you know, what are the lessons that we can take? You know, and I was speaking from my own experiences. You know, I wish I'd learnt about business, learnt about how to budget and things. And I know that's a basic thing for our young players. But is there anything else that you can think of, or have you even not even thought about it? Says, you had your chance, you stuffed up, man. It's the women's team. It's the women's time.
No, I do think about that because, because I was studying, I knew that released a lot of pressure and stress from me as an athlete. I had other avenues to release off, and I also think when you do have something outside of rugby, and particularly when you're socializing with normal Kiwis, it really keeps you in touch with the real world. So one thing that I did do near the end of my career when I was really hating my coach was I've told Daryl this, he knows, was I utilised the sports psychologist that was available to us as high performance athletes. His name was Craig Lewis, and he sat down, and what he did for me was a career plan. And it was all based around my purpose or my passion, which was I wanted to be a commentator. And he was actually the one that helped me write this plan, which I stuck to with steps of what I needed to do. And the first one was ring up Murray Deaker and see if he'd mentor me or give me an opportunity, which he did. He was amazing. So they have access to all of that resource now. And so I'd encourage everyone, no matter what, no matter how much you are getting paid now, to go and utilise not necessarily a sports psychologist, but somebody that can help you find what your passion is outside of rugby and to set that up as you go through and join the game. Because it does take a long time to actually get yourself educated or get the experience to actually enter a career after rugby. So while you're playing, it's the best time, better than any, because you do have spare time. So you might as well be filling it with your other passion. So yeah, that's big. Rob Nichols' team and that with Players Association, yep, they're great support. So they have to lean on them. But it is up to every individual player, eh? So that's the key. But education has been the best thing I ever did. It has allowed me or given me a foot in the door in so many different places, and certainly that MBA, which is a Masters in Business Admin, but everybody calls it the Marriage Breakup Association. I'm still married. But that, man, I mean, there was accounting, like full-on accounting, finance, amazing economics, big papers, but there was things like strategy and leadership and things that provoked your thought process. And then at the end, there was a career paper for a whole term as well. And that is what really got me. That's what made me actually quit my job at Sky and look for something else, because what it did was highlight to me what my values are and what are the boxes I need to tick for a job to fit me. And so being a pioneer is one of them. I like to disrupt and create new things, and I wasn't doing that where I was. So I left, and that great opportunity at TVNZ opened up. So education is everything, I think.
And make an impact. Hey, that's the other one. Disrupt, make an impact. And you're definitely, again, you're definitely doing that. And as you said, for these young women now to understand they will have a lot of free time. Yeah. And, unlike some of our younger guys who are very good on the Xbox and thinking that's a good use of their time. I just would love to think that, again, the learnings of those that have gone before and some of the errors and mistakes that you've made, that, and I'm sure they will. As you said, Rob Nichols got a good team there with the Players Association. But yeah, I always, as I've learned, and I think, like you said, you kind of understand where you're at, and I think, actually, is there something else, and when I took the plunge into getting out of the comfort zone and putting yourself out there a little bit, to chase something else, it is tough. You don't look forward to it once you're in it, because it's a whole new world. But you actually feel excited and rejuvenated, I think, when you are learning new things. As you do, you're probably gone through, get very comfortable in the life you're in.
Oh yeah, and I set up this wonderful group as well, which was about more empowered, more women in sport media. And so I always say to look, there's my dog, there he is, to young female athletes, and in particular women's rugby players, if you have a dream like I did to be in broadcasting, just come to me and I will set you up with the networks. So I've mentored a young girl who's now at TV3. Ruby Tui came into Sky thanks to me and Sumo having a conversation with her at Sevens, at National Sevens, where she just played. We just introduced her. She did the rest because she's just, talent. So that's the other thing for these young female athletes to learn, is to use those networks to try and get advice about where you go to next. The other lesson is, you've alluded to this, is probably the misuse of alcohol. And I was a great one for the misuse of alcohol. Tell you what, oh my God. And I think they're just so much better now, right? I think that culture has actually been broken, and that's brilliant, because that has had long, bad repercussions for a lot of former All Blacks and some Black Ferns. And it is, if you get into that misuse of alcohol habit, it's very, very difficult to change. So I think that's a big learning. One other learning I would take from how Super Rugby has evolved and how it's played now is, I would not play the old picky as curtain raisers. I wouldn't play them the same as the men's. I'd change some of the rules. I would put them at different venues. I'm talking famous venues like Government House or in the middle of a concert. I would innovate them completely and make them something else. And I don't think sticking them on as a curtain raiser in what is a product that needs to be improved is the answer.
Yeah, give them their own identity, really, eh?
Yeah.
So you've mentioned again some of the skills that you went through with your MBA, and what are the other transferable skills that you learned from rugby and then taken into business?
Yeah, so I think the first one is actually inclusion. I know that this is diversity inclusion. I know that they're kind of catchphrases and popular words thrown around. But you live and breathe them when you're in a rugby team, and you do take that with you. And what I mean by that is, if we went away to World Cups, we had 32 females. Now, 32 females together for 6 weeks, that's bloody tough, because so many different personalities, right? And you've got to work together as a unit to succeed and fulfill your purpose, which is to win the World Cup. So every single one of you has to fit in, and to do that, you need to be open-minded, you need to be empathetic, you need to be forgiving, and just understand that people are different. And then you have to be generous. You can't go backstabbing everybody and upsetting the team. We had a player do that. She was only in the Black Ferns 1 year, and Daryl got rid of her fast because she was like a rotten apple in the barrel. So there are lessons that you have to use in business today, every day, with working with all these different people. Teamwork, we know that that's a biggie, because successful business now, a lot of it is collaboration. It's not hierarchical anymore. So that's definitely something that rugby players automatically have when they leave teams. So they're ahead of the pack there. And then an understanding of leadership and what makes great leadership. So I always look at Farah and also Richie, yourself, and I know that some of the attributes that you guys have is that you don't tell people what to do; they follow you. You guys would talk to senior leaders, you would talk to other people in the team, you would get a consensus on the values that you all subscribe to, and then you would be able to communicate the vision in a really strong way as well, and then you would do the mahi on the field. Now that's leadership to me. I don't think leaders are people who tell other people what to do and expect them to do it. So again, a better understanding of leadership is something I got from rugby teams. So yeah, so much is transferable. It's ridiculous.
Well, yeah, I agree. And it's intrinsic in us after you've been in it for so long that you actually see, you can see when it's not happening.
Yeah.
Hey, and your ability to say something about it. I suppose that's the other side of the leadership, is not just letting it go. A standard we walk past is a standard we accept. I know that's something that a quote that who told me that one? I think it was Bowden Barrett said that. Yeah, I'd said, oh yeah, that's true. Because we do sometimes we don't want to rock the boat. As you said with in the women's team, like you don't want that confrontation, and especially around our Māori Pacific people are especially they don't like confrontation. They'll notice it and they'll just hold it a little bit, and keep an eye on what's happening. So that confrontation's a hard one, having those discussions when you're trying to pick something out.
Yeah. So yeah, actually it's a good topic here. So research tells us that New Zealanders are passive aggressive. And what that means is we won't say anything to your face. We'll go and say something about you to about 10 other people, right? And then it'll get back. And it's actually really destructive. When you're in a team, you got to learn how to do that feedback, because you all need feedback to improve, and you do learn. So obviously we know with some Pacific Islanders or some Māori that giving them direct feedback in front of the group is probably not going to work for them. And so still having that conversation and how you do it in a way to bring the best out of everybody. And yeah, I think being direct in the right way is excellent, and that is something, well, I mean, I have to keep working on it. Sometimes I'm too direct. Oh, that's shit. I've got to stop that. And always think about how to give the feedback. So yeah, another good lesson.
So what you've given so many. I've got to, sorry, my question is, what advice do you have for these upcoming young women, wanting to play Super Rugby? Now it's a professional game, so it becomes a career. What would be the key advice you would give them?
Live every moment of it and be really mindful of this amazing opportunity that you are in the middle of. That's the first thing. There's so many moments you forget later on, and a teammate will remind you, and you're like, wow, that was actually amazing. And so that mindfulness means training hard, being the best you can be, being great with other people and just enjoying every moment of it. And then at the same time, my advice would be to have an eye on the future and think about what your passion is and what you want to end up doing for at least half of your life, because most people have a career change. But just think about that and start putting baby steps in, which lead to bigger steps, which will then mean that when you choose to finish, you will be set up in the way that you want to be.
You mentioned it too, networking. Networking for, as I've spoken to other guests, especially while you're in the game, talking to sponsors, when you're in promos, letting yourself be known to who could possibly, help you on that passion or that career path that you want to get to afterwards. You talked about, you approached Murray Deka. I could never have thought myself to do those things. The other side of that too, and those sponsors, I was just so intent to get out of it and, just not talk to people. But now you realize people are willing to help. Rugby people are willing to help rugby people. There's so much that you can learn from, all these different people if you just ask the question.
Oh, it's amazing. It's amazing. Here's an example for you of why you should always think about networking and forming long-lasting friendships with your rugby network. I have been out and about for 25 years, at pubs, after rugby games, whatever, socialising with hundreds of rugby people, right? And I never realised what I was doing during that time was forming some amazing connections. And it all came to fruition 2 years ago when Rob Nicol rang me. I was talking to him about something else, and he said, would you be interested in being one of the international rugby players reps on one of the Rugby World Cup boards? And I was like, absolutely, because everything about representing players ticks every box for me at governance level. And so he rang up Omar Hussein, who I've been out with a million times over, who knew who I was, looked at my CV and went, oh, yeah, that's bloody good. Let's see if she'll fit in with Brian O'Driscoll. Brian O'Driscoll, who you know very well as well.
I do.
Of course, I've been drinking with him as well. I know him. And so all of these people that I've known ended up giving me the opportunity to pair up with Brian to be on Rugby World Cup Limited board, which is one of the most powerful sport boards you can be on, because it governs the commercial interests of World Cups. And how amazing is that? So yeah, networks, all those people you meet, make sure they're deep friendships, not just, oh, what can I use this person for, but deep friendships where you talk about a lot of stuff that's so important for setting you up.
Nice. So the future of our game is looking bright since you're on that on that board.
Well, they're also changing their business model. They announced this late last year. So similar to what New Zealand Rugby is proposing with Silver Lake, which is setting up a separate commercial entity to run all of New Zealand's commercial interests, World Rugby is doing the same with World Cups. And so they are setting up an entity which will run future World Cups. And the difference with that is usually it is the hosting country that runs the organising committee. But World Rugby taking a separate commercial entity means it's going to be more agile, it's going to take more risks, it's going to innovate around, connecting with fans, and maybe even how they run these events and what entertainment's available at these events. So I think that's really super exciting if they get the governance and also the capability in there right. So I think World Rugby is certainly looking really super strong in that commercial area.
And with that, in the current climate, what's happening in the world with COVID, does that affect the thinking as well?
Well, it certainly did. Women's Rugby World Cup was delayed, so impacted there. And that was to avert the risk of uncertainty. So they could have tried to run it last year, but luckily they didn't, because we were in lockdown. So it was a great decision to delay it. It looks like COVID is not impacting on the Sevens World Cup over in South Africa. They seem to be running sports events no matter what. So yeah, it is impacting. It's massive. But luckily, World Rugby's money basically just comes from the Men's Rugby World Cup currently. So that's France 2023. By that time, hopefully, we'll be in a world which is living with COVID, and the variations have become more like the flu. So fingers crossed.
Yeah, well, and that's also that agility you talk about. Like as we've learned with COVID, you can't just sit back and think that it's going to go past you. You've got to work around it and work with it and find other ways, which is listening to yourself and talking about all those different aspects of looking outside the box. Is exciting, because I think we have to, especially for our game, in terms of the numbers, especially in New Zealand, and men's rugby. I'm talking about with women's. We need to showcase that, because that's the growing part of our game, isn't it? Hey, Mel, I've got one last question for you. So, you're a mother, you're a wife, and you're a busy lady. So, how do you keep on top of your health and well-being?
This is a never-ending yo-yo situation here. I've just actually finished at Aotearoa Retreat, a 3.5-day fasting. Yeah, no food for 3.5 days. So I do lots of bits and pieces to keep myself healthy. I've got myself a trainer because I needed a kickstart back into the weights. I like to run. That fits in around my schedule, and I use the Nike half marathon training plan. So I just pick up various runs out of that. And then I've got the Nike running app as well. So there's heaps of different guided runs, and it's awesome to run to. So just bits and pieces, and then I try not to drink wine as much. That's the hard part.
I was going to say, geez, so you're starving yourself for 3 days, and then I was, how's your nutrition plan?
Yeah, well, I lost 2 kgs, but let's see how fast that comes back on, eh?
Oh, geez, and your knees must be okay if you're running a bit.
Yeah, no, I was lucky. I didn't have any knee or ankle injuries, so yeah, no, they still work all right. So no, I think I'm lucky to be a rugby player still running.
And you've got some steep hills around you, so I'm sure they'll help out.
We do.
Hey Mel, I really appreciate your time and your sharing, those insights with us. And I wish you all the best. And I'm sure we'll catch up in due course. It's a small game in our country, but I'm sure we'll meet around the trap somewhere.
Great, lovely to talk to you, Tana. I've got your number now. I'll never forget it.
Oh no, appreciate it. You take care.
Awesome. Thank you. That's great.
Hey, no, I really.